I just read the best comic book Kickstarter that I've seen in a while. It was so good, I'll tell you what. In fact, hold on. Roll the channel logo. So what's going on, guys? Brian from Simpleman's Comics. So I recently received an email from a creator. The guy's his name is Giles Clark. He's from Uncharted Wilderness Studios. He said, "Hey Brian, I really like your YouTube channel. Do you mind reviewing a comic book for us? We got a Kickstarter about to kick off." And I said, "Sure, no problem." Turns out also he is a Marine Corps veteran, so by all means, definitely helping out at that point. So let me tell you about this comic book. It's World of Tomorrow. It takes place in 1950s. It's an action science fiction comedy. It's been meticulously researched. I mean, the level of detail is absolutely phenomenal. You definitely feel like you're sitting in 1950s television just reading this book. So let me tell you about the creators of this comic book. It's written by Giles Clark. The art is by Kenan Halilovic. It's out of Bosnia, so I might have butchered that name because Lord knows I am the worst with names. Colorist is by Felipe Abando, who's out of Costa Rica. And the letter is by Darren Bennett, who's out of the most outrageous place. If you think Bosnia and Costa Rica, he's from New Jersey. So yeah, and Giles Clark, if you didn't know, he is based out of Los Angeles, which is also where Uncharted Wilderness Studios is. So a little bit more about the comic book. Craig Barstow, who's the protagonist, he and the show that he stars in is a little bit past their prime. But Barstow also has a little bit of a adult Kool-Aid problem. Not to mention Barstow is also indebted to the mob. So they decide to rub him out, but things don't go as planned. So the outcome out of it is Craig Barstow actually comes out thinking he's the actual character from the TV show that he plays. So right then, once I read all that, I was ready to get into the first issue. I was like, yes, please send it to me. I can't wait to read it. So they sent me a copy of the first PDF, and I got right into it. And it was one of those types of comics that once you start reading it, you don't. I got to the end of it, and there was a PDF. I thought the PDF wasn't fully loaded because I kept scrolling up wanting to read more, but it's not. It leaves you wanting the next issue. You can't wait. You want to see what happens with this character. That's kind of jumping ahead, so let me back up and I'll get into what I liked about that first issue. One thing I really enjoyed is, like I said, there's meticulous research. So there's a lot of that 1950s naivete humor. Of course, I'm born in the late 70s, so I'm not from the 50s, but I have watched 50s television, so I can pick up on it from that much. Like one example is at the beginning of the book, they finish shooting a scene, and an enemy that they were fighting, they make the joke like, haha, he left his luggage here. Well, it turns out it was actually left on purpose and it was a bomb, and then they cut the scene from filming the show. Craig Barstow's a little bit past his prime, so once the scene cuts, crew members and everyone talking, you can hear them talking under their breath about, I'm surprised he's not drunk, or remembered his lines. Also, one of the crew members comes up and apologizes to Craig for punching him in the face when actually Craig was supposed to duck. The crew member is new, he introduces himself, and another part that I thought was funny was his name was Johnny Redshirt. So, like I said, if you're a fan of science fiction, right there where you know his last name is Redshirt, you instantly start thinking some things like maybe he's not going to be around too long. While Johnny Redshirt and Barstow are talking, in the background, you see a couple, two strangers there, and they're sabotaging the set, and basically Johnny Redshirt goes over there and he puts his hand on the wall where the set was, and the whole wall falls over. And the show, I don't know if it's the producer or the director, basically fires the guy, and Craig Barstow tries to stick up for him and says, "Hey man, no one got hurt." Then the producer said, "People can heal, but sets cost money. That's why we have Doc Irving to fix people that are broken." But what you don't know is that Doc was actually fired from every other studio in town for giving child actors amphetamines. So, yeah, there's that. So Craig tells Johnny Redshirt, "Hey man, sorry I couldn't save your job." But that's when Johnny Redshirt also spills the beans that, hey, the show's being canceled anyways, and it's being replaced by Pony Express. Craig Barstow's like, "What the heck? No one told me about this." So Craig asks the producer or director what's going on. He doesn't tell him any information. So he's like, "Fine, I'm going to go to the studio head, Mr. Friesman." He's like, "Go right ahead." So he marches into the office and acts like, you know, since he's been there and been the star of the show, that he thinks he walks on water, but as soon as he gets in there, he finds out for sure he does not. Has his word with Mr. Friesman. First, Mr. Friesman tells him that not only is the show being replaced, but he's being replaced also. So Craig asks, "What's going on?" And he said, "Hey, we're switching to Westerns." A little bit more of that humor. He said Westerns will be here forever and will never go out of style. So who's actually going to replace Craig also? None other than Mr. Friesman's nephew. Been a bad day for Craig. After he leaves Mr. Friesman's office, he finds out everyone's left the studio and his dressing room is locked. He tries to yank the door open, but the only thing that comes off is the doorknob. He can't get in there, so guess what? He has to go home in his costume from the show. And not only does he not drive, he's at the bus stop waiting. So there's a funny conversation with an old lady at the bus stop. She asks him if he's in the Navy or if he's a drum major, which he's neither. And the bus pulls up. They get on the bus. 1950s bus driver says 10 cents. And only thing he has to pay for, since everything in his dressing room, is the doorknob, and that doesn't go. So right behind him, security guard pays his way. And while they're riding back, there's a conversation between him and the security guard. Security guard tells him, "Hey, my grandchild loves your show, loves you." And he asks him, "Hey, do you have a pen and a piece of paper? I'll give you an autograph." Of course, the security guard's like, "Well, I'm fresh out." Security guard gets off at the next stop and he's like, "Hey, give him this doorknob. Tell him it's from, the spaceship or whatever." The security guard's just like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." So then gets to his bus stop, he's walking home, and the neighbor's child is a huge fan of his, comes running out. He's all like cosplayed up. He's got like a colander on his head, and he tells him he's reporting for duty. So then they have a small conversation, and then his mom calls him in for dinner, and it's getting dark. And at the same time, the little kid's father comes home, and he's already asking, "Hey, what's for dinner?" Long day working, comes home, expects to have his meal prepared for him. So they cut from there. I don't know if he has a bed or not, but he's sleeping in a chair, and he hears ruckus, wakes up. The neighbor husband, you can hear him arguing of, "Oh, you think I'm dirty? You think I'm a pigsty? Here, I'll clean up." And he's throwing stuff out of the house. You can tell he's alcoholic's got a freaking bottle in his hand. Craig tries to be a hero, goes out there, and pretty much gets knocked out. Punched in the face. So instead of going home at that point, he ends up at a speakeasy type casino, which turns out to be run by that same mob that he owes money to. Tries to get a drink, but they won't let him have any because, one, he doesn't have any money, and he owes them way too much money. The two guys that sabotage the set show up, Nichols and Jr., and they tell him, "The boss wants to speak to you." Not only does he want to speak to him, but he wants to know where his money is. So Craig goes back there, talks to the boss, whose name is Mr. Z. At that time, he pretty much tells him, "Hey, shows got canceled, I'm out of a job, I have no money." So Mr. Z is like, "Well, that's not going to work for me. You owe us way too much money." So then Mr. Z tells Junior and Nichols, "Hey, why don't you help Mr. Barstow catch a car?" So they walk him out of the casino, and Craig's like, "Hey, no worry guys, I can find my whole way home." He's like, "No, we were told to help you catch a car." So then one of the guys picks him up over his head right when a car is driving down the road, basically throws him into the car and just splat, right? So then you see they're asking, "Is he dead?" But they show him getting up, and boom, he gets hit by another car. And not only that, but the way the art's drawn, he gets hit by a car and he's pretty much flopping up in the air. And it ends. That's how issue 1 ends, and you're like, holy cow. So I really enjoyed this comic. In fact, first thing I did after I read it is I emailed Giles, told him how awesome I thought the comic book was. And then I told him the whole time I was reading it, all I could think of was Bruce Campbell playing the part of Craig. I mean, it just seemed so much like him, especially Evil Dead, typical Bruce Campbell. That's what I picked up reading this book. So if you like Bruce Campbell, you definitely want to read this book. Giles emailed me back and said, "That's funny, when he was writing it, he thought of Rob Riggle or Patrick Warburton playing the protagonist." And I could see either of those playing it too. So if you like either of those, this is definitely a Kickstarter that you want to back, because it's got that type of humor in it. I mean, you can feel it coming off the page, and you just imagine those type people playing the role of Craig in this comic book. So I'm definitely glad he reached out and asked me to read this, because I feel privileged. So I highly recommend you back this on Kickstarter if you can. I'll put a link to the Kickstarter campaign on the screen right here, and it'll also be in the description of this video. So once again, Giles, if you're watching, thank you for letting me review this, and everyone else, please back this Kickstarter because it's well worth it. And if you guys have comments, go ahead and comment on the video. I'll answer what I can. If you like this video, click that thumbs up. And if you haven't done so, and you aren't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to my channel because I love making videos for everyone. Thanks for watching, guys.